Yeah, here he is, Redskins historian Mike Richman, and there's a lot of history between these two teams dating all the way back to 1932. In fact, when the Redskins moved to D.C., who was their first opponent?
The New York Giants, September 16, 1937, at Old Griffith Stadium. A 13-3 Redskins win.
Now, what is your favorite memory of this rivalry? There's been so many. I'll give you mine. You know what mine is.
Of course, yes.
You know mine is, but what is yours?
Well, it has to be the Mark Mosley field goal in 1982.
Me too.
15-14 Redskins. With that kick, he broke Gary Yepremian's all-time record for consecutive field goals. This was Mosley's 21st straight. And he won NFL MVP that year.
And clinched the playoff berth with that field goal.
Exactly.
And week one of that season, the Redskins went into overtime to beat Philadelphia. And what was unusual about Mosley's performance in that game?
Well, he kicked the tying score at the end of regulation. That kick was like a 45-yarder. And then he kicked the game winner in overtime.
And he wasn't the only kicker on the roster.
Dan Miller.
Yes.
Dan Miller. Actually, the Redskins were grooming Miller as their next kicker. But Mosley somehow beat him out in the preseason, and it was all fate because Mosley was the star for the Redskins that year and winning the Super Bowl.
So he almost didn't even make the team, and he ends up being the MVP.
Exactly.
All right, you also have a connection with Eli Manning and a long-forgotten, maybe not forgotten, but a long time ago Giant QB.
Right, well, Eli Manning is not the only really good Giants quarterback to have gone to Ole Miss. Charlie Connerly, a name from the past. He was actually drafted by the Redskins in 1945 when he was still in the U.S. military in World War II. Then he went back to Ole Miss, played a few more years there. Then the Redskins signed him in 1948 as a successor to Sammy Baugh. However, they traded him to the Giants, one of the major gaffes of Redskins history. They instead chose Harry Gilmer to replace Baugh, but Gilmer was a flop. And then Connerly went on to lead the Giants to 3 NFL championship game appearances, including the '58 game against the Colts.
Now, how would you characterize this rivalry? I mean, like I say, you know, the Redskins hate the Cowboys. They dislike, or they almost hate the Eagles, and there's a strong dislike for the Giants. How would you characterize this rivalry?
Well, I think today the Redskins, the Cowboys are their #1 rival, but they really, really don't like playing the Eagles or the Giants.
Right.
Let's go back to the early 70s. I mean, there was a feud between the two teams back then. George Allen's early years in D.C. 1971, 33 Redskins over the Giants. Fran Tarkenton threw a football at the head of Jimmy Jones, a Redskins defensive end. And then the following year, a sports writer from the old Washington Star, Maurice Siegel, called the Redskins and the Giants like the Hatfields and the McCoys. The assistant coaches were fighting after a game, a Redskins win at RFK Stadium. George Allen had called a timeout with 20 seconds left well, the Giants thought it would be to run up the score.
Of course, Sam Huff called the famous timeout, too, to run up that score on the Giants because he hated Allie Sherman.
That was definitely to run up the score. The '66 game, 72-41 Redskins.
And, of course, this season, something special, looking for payback, but also, you know, at the head of the line for those salary cap penalties earlier this year were the New York Giants. So I don't want anybody to forget that, as the Redskins were unfairly penalized, and one of the people behind it was one of their division rivals.
Well, exactly, the New York Giants, the owner for the Giants. Seemingly, he was behind it.
Yeah, seemingly. Mike,
we don't want to make any accusations.
Holidays are upon us. You got some great books the folks might like to get.
Thank you, Larry. Yes, RedskinsHistorian.com. That's my website. The Redskins Vault, I only have 5 more copies. I'm being exact now. 5 more copies. Go to the site. Also, I have the Redskins Encyclopedia there. And the Vault is now a collector's item, not available anywhere else.
And you can get a snappy shirt like this as well. Up next, the Fan Forum on Redskins Nation.